The phone screen glowed blue in the darkness, and my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. 3:47 in the morning. My husband's phone. His passcode that he thought I didn't know, our wedding anniversary, how ironic, had worked on the first try. And there, right at the top of his messages, was a conversation that made my stomach drop so hard I thought I might be sick right there on our bedroom floor. The name at the top just said M. The preview line read, "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible." I remember the exact texture of our carpet under my knees. How the heating vent was blowing warm air that suddenly felt suffocating. How I could hear Jake's breathing from our bed, steady and peaceful, while my entire world fractured into 1,000 pieces with each word I read. But that first message, that preview, that wasn't even the worst part. Not by a long shot. Because when I opened that thread and started scrolling, I realized I wasn't reading an affair. I was reading something so much darker, so much more calculated, that an affair would have been a mercy. The messages went back months. Detailed plans, photographs, bank account numbers, and names, so many names I recognized. Our neighbors, his coworkers. My own sister's name appeared 17 times. I thought I was catching my husband cheating. I had no idea I was about to uncover a betrayal so deep it would destroy 3 families and 2 marriages, and leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about the man I'd shared a bed with for 6 years. My finger hovered over a message with an attachment. A PDF file labeled Phase 3, Final Transfer. Every instinct screamed at me not to open it, to put the phone down, to go back to bed and pretend I'd never seen any of this. But I'd already crossed that line the moment I picked up his phone. So I tapped it, and that's when I learned that the person I'd trusted most in the world wasn't who I thought he was. Not even close. Let me back up because you need to understand what my life looked like before that night. Jake and I met at university. One of those perfectly ordinary love stories. Coffee shop, both reaching for the last blueberry muffin, he asked me out. 6 months later, we were inseparable. 2 years after graduation, he proposed. Everyone said we were perfect together. He worked as a cybersecurity consultant, brilliant at it. Companies paid him serious money to find vulnerabilities in their systems, to think like hackers so he could protect them. I should have paid more attention to that, to how good he was at finding weaknesses and exploiting them. Our marriage felt solid. Sunday morning pancakes. Thursday night takeaway. We just bought our first proper house 18 months earlier. Jake worked from home most days in his converted office. I'd hear him on video calls and feel this warm pride that he was mine. The only odd thing, looking back, was how protective he was of his phone. Always face down. Always on silent. When I'd ask to borrow it, he'd get this tight smile and say his work was confidential. Made sense at the time. I never questioned it. I trusted him completely. We had couple friends, Mark and Sarah from 2 doors down, David and Jennifer from Jake's work. Normal dinners and drinks, normal conversations about mortgages and maybe starting a family soon. My younger sister Emma had just gone through a brutal divorce and moved in with us for 2 months. Jake had been so supportive, helping her set up new bank accounts with better security, showing her how to protect herself digitally. Emma said Jake was one of the good ones, that I was lucky. I agreed. 3 weeks before that night, Jake started acting different, taking his phone into the bathroom, staying up later than usual, saying he had a big project deadline. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and find his side of the bed empty, the blue glow of his computer screen visible under his office door. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd kiss my forehead and say work was just stressful. I made him tea, told him not to work too hard. Went back to bed feeling like a supportive wife. Then came that Tuesday night. We'd had dinner with Mark and Sarah. Lovely evening, too much wine. Jake said he needed to send one quick email, then he'd come to bed. An hour passed, then another. At 1:30 I went to check on him, but his office door was locked. I could hear him typing frantically. When I knocked harder, he finally opened the door looking flustered, almost angry. Told me he had work to finish. Could I please just go to bed? The edge in his voice shocked me. Jake never snapped. I went back to our room, hurt and confused. Lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to him type and type and type. Around 3 in the morning, I heard his office door open, his footsteps in the hall, the bathroom door closing. And then I saw it. The blue glow from the bedside table. His phone. He'd left his phone. In 6 years of marriage, Jake had never, not once, left his phone unattended where I could access it. I still don't know what possessed me to pick it up. My hands moved before my brain could stop them. I lifted it carefully, punched in our anniversary. The phone unlocked, and there it was, that message from M that made my heart stop. That's when I started reading. And when my entire understanding of my husband, my marriage, and my life disintegrated in real time, the first thing I realized as I scrolled was that M wasn't a woman. M was Mark, our neighbor, Jake's friend. The second thing I realized was that they weren't having an affair. This was worse. So much worse. The messages were clinical, detailed, organized into folders by name. I recognized every single person. David from Jake's work. Jennifer.
Sarah. Emma.
My sister Emma. My own parents. Even my name had its own folder. I couldn't breathe properly. Each message I opened made less sense until gradually, horrifically, they started making perfect sense. Jake and Mark had been working together for over 2 years, systematically accessing people's financial information, passwords, private data, everything digital. Jake would identify the vulnerabilities. Mark, who ran his own IT business, would exploit them. They'd clone phones, install spyware, intercept authentication codes, stealing from everyone we knew, carefully and slowly, amounts small enough that no one noticed right away. From David and Jennifer, his own work colleagues, they'd siphoned nearly £40,000. From Sarah, Mark's own wife, they'd been skimming her freelance income. She thought she was just struggling financially. She had no idea her husband was the reason why. And Emma. God, Emma. Jake had helped her set up those secure bank accounts after her divorce, with backdoor access for himself. He'd been watching every penny, gradually draining her accounts, making it look like banking errors. She'd come to me crying 3 weeks ago, saying she didn't understand why she was always short on money. She thought she was going mad. She'd started therapy because she couldn't trust her own perception of reality. The whole time it was Jake. The PDF Phase 3 final transfer was a plan. Within the next month, Jake and Mark were planning to empty multiple accounts simultaneously, cover their tracks, and disappear. New identities. Flights booked. Over £200,000 stolen. They were planning to abandon their wives, their lives, everything. I sat on that floor reading until dawn grayed the windows. Jake had gone back to his office at some point. But here's the twist I didn't see coming. Mixed in with those cold, calculated messages were conversations showing Jake panicking. He'd been sending messages to Mark for 3 weeks saying he couldn't go through with it, that he loved me, that he wanted to stop, to confess, to make it right. Mark had been threatening him, manipulating him, reminding him about what happened in uni that would destroy Jake's career if it ever came out. The man I thought was a monster was actually a coward, which somehow made everything worse. Jake had gotten in over his head. Started small probably, just little exploitations. Mark had encouraged it, escalated it, and now Jake was trapped. The messages showed him begging Mark to stop, to let him out. Mark's responses were cold, threatening, controlling. My husband was a criminal, but he was also a victim. And I had no idea what to do with that information. I heard his office door open. Footsteps toward our bedroom. I shoved his phone back and dove under the covers, pulse hammering. He slid into bed beside me. His arm came around my waist. He whispered sorry for snapping earlier. That work stress was getting to him. I lay there rigid, pretending to be asleep, while the man I no longer knew held me close. For 3 days, I carried on as normal. Made breakfast. Went to work. Smiled. Chatted. The entire time my mind was screaming. I'd stolen his passcode. Started checking his messages every time he showered. The conversations with Mark had intensified. Mark was pushing up the timeline. David had noticed suspicious activity and was asking questions at work. They needed to move fast. Jake kept trying to slow it down, saying he needed time to find a way to return the money anonymously. Mark told him he was being pathetic. I was watching my husband's life implode through text messages, and he had no idea I was watching. I thought about going to the police constantly, but every time I'd imagine the aftermath. Jake arrested. Media coverage. The trial. Prison. My marriage ending in criminal proceedings. And this horrible, weak part of me wondered if there was a way to fix this without destroying everything. That's when I made my first massive mistake. For days after finding the messages, I confronted him. Not about the theft, not yet. I asked casually over dinner if everything was okay with Mark. Jake's fork stopped midair. His face went pale. He asked why I was asking. I said Sarah had seemed upset, that I wondered if there was tension. Jake's hands were shaking. He said Mark was going through some stuff. Their friendship was complicated. He wouldn't elaborate, but I saw the fear in his eyes. The trapped, desperate look of someone caught in something they couldn't escape. I pushed further, asked if Jake was in trouble. I thought I was being clever, giving him an opening to confess. Instead, I'd just shown my hand. That night, he changed all his passwords, added facial recognition to his phone. I watched him do it, my heart sinking, realizing I'd just closed my only window into what was happening. What I didn't know was that confronting him had triggered something else entirely. Something that would force everything to explode much sooner than planned. 2 days later, everything crashed down. I came home from work early, feeling crushed by what I knew. I decided that morning I was going to the police regardless of consequences. Emma didn't deserve this. None of them did. When I walked in, I heard voices. Jake's and Mark's.
Raised. Angry.
Coming from Jake's office. I crept closer and heard Mark clearly through the door. He was threatening to release photos from university. Compromising photos that would destroy Jake's career. Jake was begging him to stop, saying he'd go through with the final transfer. Mark said it was too late. David had filed an official complaint at work. HR was investigating. They had 72 hours before everything connected back to them. They needed to execute the plan tonight. And then Mark said something that made my blood freeze. And your wife. We need to handle your wife. She's asking questions. She's a liability. Handle me. I didn't think. I pulled out my phone and called the police. Right there in my hallway. Whispered that there were intruders making threats. Gave my address. The operator told me to get out, but I didn't. I couldn't. I stood there frozen while the voices got more heated. Jake was shouting now, saying no. Mark had gone too far. Mark was saying Jake didn't have a choice. The police arrived in under 6 minutes. 2 officers. I told them there were 2 men in the back office, one who'd threatened me. They asked if I was in danger. I said yes. I believed it. What happened next felt like a TV show. The officers went to Jake's office, identified themselves. Shouting inside. Mark tried to run, literally tried to push past them and bolt. They detained him immediately. Jake just stood there, hands shaking, looking at me with absolute devastation. And I made a choice. The choice I'll regret for the rest of my life, depending on how you look at it. I told them everything. Every message I'd seen. Every theft. Every name. I showed them Emma's bank statements with the mysterious withdrawals. I'd saved screenshots that first night, backed them up to a cloud account Jake didn't know about. I gave the police access to everything. Jake collapsed. Literally sank to his knees while I described how my husband had stolen from our family, our friends, our neighbors. Mark was screaming that I was lying. Within 2 hours, our house was full of detectives. They seized everything. They brought in Sarah, who broke down completely. David and Jennifer arrived. They'd been contacted as victims. David looked at Jake with such betrayal. They'd been best mates. I'd thought turning Jake in would feel like justice. Instead, it felt like I was murdering everything I'd ever loved. But here's the final twist. The one that broke me completely. After they'd taken Jake and Mark away, after I was finally alone, I got a notification. An email from Jake. scheduled to send if he didn't cancel it every 24 hours, a dead man switch. It was a full confession. Everything. How it started, how Mark manipulated him, what the university incident was. Jake had been arrested for hacking as a stupid prank when he was 19. Charges dropped, record expunged. But Mark had kept evidence, had held it over Jake for years. The email outlined exactly how they'd stolen the money and where it all was. Nothing had been spent. Not a penny. It was all sitting in encrypted accounts, earmarked for victims. Every person was listed with exact amounts. Jake had been documenting everything, building a case against Mark and himself. He'd been planning to go to the police himself. The email ended with an apology to me. For lying. For being weak. He said he understood if I hated him. That he loved me more than anything, and that was precisely why he'd been trying to fix it before I found out. I'd turned him in right before he was going to turn himself in. I'd shattered our lives when he was trying to save them. The police confirmed it. Jake had an appointment with a solicitor for the following morning. He'd been planning to confess with legal counsel, arrange for the money to be returned, accept whatever punishment came. Mark had sensed it, which was why he'd come over to threaten Jake that day. I'd accelerated the inevitable, but in the worst way possible. Jake still got charged with the same crimes. Mark got 8 years. Jake got 5. The judge acknowledged his cooperation, his remorse, the fact he'd been preparing to confess. But crimes were still crimes. Everyone got their money back. But Emma won't speak to me. She says I should have told her immediately, given her the choice.
She's right.
Sarah divorced Mark and moved away. David transferred offices. Our neighborhood fell apart. And Jake, my husband, who I still love despite everything, who I hate myself for still loving, is in prison. I visit him once a month. We're not divorced. I can't make myself file the papers. He tells me I should, that I deserve better. But I can't let go. The house feels empty. The garden is overgrown. I still sleep on my side of the bed. Sometimes I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and remember that blue glow, that moment I picked up his phone, and I'll wonder what would have happened if I'd waited one more day. If I'd given him the chance to confess first. Trust is everything in a relationship. But so is timing. So is communication. Jake was wrong for what he did, absolutely wrong. But I was wrong too. I didn't trust him enough to tell him what I'd found. I didn't give him the chance to explain. I made decisions about both our lives without including him, just like he'd done to me. We betrayed each other, just in different ways. I still don't know if I'd make the same choice again. And that might be the most haunting part of all. If you've made it through my story, I hope it helps somehow. Maybe it helps you feel less alone if you're facing an impossible choice. Talk to the people you love before you make choices that can't be undone. Trust them, but verify when something feels wrong. I wish I had. Every story leaves a mark. If this one touched you, let the telling tree grow by your like and subscribe.